Global News Update. I am President Mohamed. Israeli forces raided the Askar refugee camp in the occupied West Bank city of Nablus and demolished the home of a Palestinian man who was allegedly involved in killing 2 Israeli settlers last February. According to the Palestinian news agency Wafa, Israeli forces surrounded the third-floor home of Abdel Fattah Karouche overnight on Tuesday and blew it up 6 hours after the raid. The army had accused Karouche of shooting dead 2 settlers, Hallel Menachem Yaniv and his brother Yagel Yaakov Yaniv, in February as they drove through the occupied West Bank town of Uwara. Israeli forces killed Karouche, 49, during a raid the following month. Before the demolition, Israeli soldiers forced at least 60 Palestinians, including 20 children who lived next to the home of the Karouche family, to leave their houses and briefly detained them inside the local mosque. According to Wafa, the latest raid sparked heavy confrontations between the Israeli army and the camp's residents. The Palestinian Red Crescent said they dealt with 185 cases of tear gas suffocation and that 6 Palestinians were wounded, including 1 by live ammunition. A senior United States diplomat has visited Niger to push coup authorities to restore democratic rule after the overthrow of President Mohamed Bazoum last month. Victoria Nuland, the U.S. acting Deputy Secretary of State, said on Monday that she held frank and difficult talks with military leader Moussa Salaou Barmou and 3 of his colonels in Niger's capital, Niamey. It was the first trip by a U.S. official to the country since the coup on July 26th. Nuland's request to meet with Bazoum and Abdurrahman Chiani, the self-proclaimed head of the military government, were denied, she said in a telephone briefing. Afterwards, with reporters, she offered a grim assessment of her talks with the military leaders. Nuland, however, reaffirmed her country's commitment to a negotiated solution to the conflict if the coup leaders are willing to return to Niger's constitutional order. Nuland said that the US is prepared to help with that. Earlier on Monday, the US State Department had confirmed it had made direct contact with the coup leaders and had stressed the need for Bazoum to be reinstated. War crimes committed by Myanmar's military, including the bombing of civilians, have become increasingly frequent and brazen, a team of United Nations investigators said in a report published on Tuesday. The report by the Independent Investigative Mechanism for Myanmar, IIMM, which covered the period between July 2022 and June 2023, said there was strong evidence that the Myanmar military and its affiliate militias have committed 3 types of combat-related war crimes with increasing frequency and brazenness. These crimes include the indiscriminate or disproportionate targeting of civilians using bombs and the burning of civilian homes and buildings, resulting at times in the destruction of entire villages, it said. The report also cited killings of civilians or combatants detained during operations. Since the junta seized power 2 years ago, Myanmar has been plunged into chaos, with a resistance movement fighting the military on multiple fronts after a bloody crackdown on opponents that saw Western countries reimpose sanctions. A spokesperson for the junta could not be reached for comment on the findings made by UN investigators. Sea ice in the Antarctic region has fallen to a record low this year as a result of rising global temperatures, and there is no quick fix to reverse the damage done, scientists said on Tuesday in a new study of the impact of climate change on the continent. The continent's minimum summer ice cover, which last year dipped below 2 million square kilometers for the first time since satellite monitoring began in 1978, fell further to a new low in February, according to a study published in the journal Frontiers in Environmental Science. This year's sea ice minimum is 20% lower than the average over the last 40 years, equivalent to a sea ice loss nearly 10 times the area of New Zealand, said Tim Niger, director of the Antarctic Research Centre at New Zealand's Victoria University of Wellington, who was not a participant in the study. Global warming driven by the burning of fossil fuels has made Antarctica more vulnerable to extreme events, and the impact is virtually certain to get worse, the study said. Climate change will lead to increases in the size and frequency of heat waves, ice shelf collapses, and declines in sea ice, it said, drawing on recent evidence from scientific studies of the Antarctic Ocean, atmosphere, cryosphere, and biosphere. Western Australia will overturn its 2021 Aboriginal Cultural Heritage Protection Laws introduced after the destruction of the ancient Juukan Gorge rock shelters in response to opposition from landowners. The state premier said on Tuesday the indigenous group whose shelters were legally destroyed by mining giant Rio Tinto in 2020 said it was outraged by the decision to scrap the protection. The rock shelters had shown human habitation stretching back 46,000 years. State Premier Roger Cook said the 2021 legislation would be dropped after widespread opposition from farmers and pastoralists. Instead, a 1972 law would be restored and amended to ensure the protection of important sites. In quote, the Jukan Gorge tragedy was a global embarrassment, but our response was wrong. We took it too far, unintentionally causing stress, confusion, and division in our community, Cook said. The amendments to the 1972 law were, in quote, simple and effective and would prevent another Jukan Gorge from happening, he said. Landowners have been up in arms over what he said was onerous and costly regulation set down in the 2021 law. That is the size of top accurate global news updates. You can follow us on our social media platforms as displayed on your screen. Happy Tuesday!